You ever get the feeling the city walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating your soul? You crave wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe chase some elk, fish a private stream. Well, listen up. There's a whole world out there, and finding your own piece of it just got easier. Head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forest, mountains, you name it. Search by acreage, location, the kind of hunting or fishing you dream of. Land.com. It's where the adventure begins.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
All right. 100 sides to go, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, Oswald only documented as having had a confidential level of security clearance. Most people speculate Oswald was guarding the U-2 while at Subic Point. This is totally false. That's absolutely not true at all. It's provable that the U-2 was never at Subic Point when he was there. Okay, so this is interesting. After they leave Biloxi and Oswald goes on break and goes to visit his mother at 3830 West 6th Street, Martin Strand will get court-martialed. And he was court-martialed because while he was at Biloxi, he lit a mattress on fire. Why he did this, I don't know. And it's never really talked about. But I have a feeling Martin Strand wanted out of this thing and they weren't going to let him out. And this was him kind of acting up. This is speculation on my part, of course, but I can't really think of a whole lot else that makes sense. They tried to make it seem after the fact that he was a problem child. Like they dug up the fact that he was arrested a couple years before this for some bullshit when he was a juvenile. You know, they tried to paint him as the bad guy. But there's some interesting stuff and stuff that I really don't understand in regards to, like, you know how I said that when they were at Biloxi, it indicated they were at Casual Company headquarters in Alexandria, Virginia. Well, depending on whether you're traveling, whether you have leave or don't have leave, if you're on duty, they obviously pay for you to move around the country. But if you're off duty, if you're on the leave, you have to, they might provide transportation, but you have to pay it back. Well, all of the travel that Oswald and the 6 guys did when they were allegedly on leave after leaving Biloxi, which should not have been paid for by the fucking Marine Corps at all. It should have said, there's an indication here. Maybe I can translate it here. I'm not seeing it, but there's an indicator on whether it's reimbursable or not, whether they have to reimburse for the travel expenses, right? All of the travel done by the 6 guys who were in Oswald's course at Biloxi, when I checked their travel records, all of them were paid for by the Marine Corps as on active duty, not on leave, which doesn't make sense because I have tons of records where guys go on leave and it says, reimbursable or non-reimbursable. But it was opposite for these guys, which to me didn't make any sense at all. Another thing that's interesting, all these guys got through Biloxi and they all got issued a career number, an MOS, which is basically it's the number that indicates what you do as a career. And 6741 was supposed to be the control operator. And everyone got one except for Martin Strand, which is weird. And this is documented June 24th, 57, before he got killed. All right, what do we have here? This is just more stuff on Strand. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on Strand. We'll skip to the end of Strand, and what I'll tell you about Strand is that Martin Strand's brother, Raymond Strand, allegedly fell off a Navy transport ship and was killed just a couple months after, in May of 58, 4 months after his brother was shot to death. The one thing that no one ever talks about and is never actually in the newspapers or was never really in any documents, and it was actually only dug up by an associate of John Armstrong's, was that Martin Strand, his brother Raymond, was actually stationed at Subic Bay with Martin in just the weeks leading up to Martin's death. So whatever Martin witnessed, his brother witnessed also. And I promise you it had to do with the other Oswald. These guys discovered the duplicate Oswald scheme, and they were killed by the Navy and the Marines. I fucking promise you. I don't give a shit what documents say. I don't care. The void of documents is so great, and common sense dictates that these two motherfuckers were together at Subic Point, and they both end up dead within 4 months, and both interacted with Oswald. That's what I got to say to that. Yeah, so despite being listed as an AVN electronics operator, Oswald was he was on mess duty all the time because he was always in trouble, and he was also on guard duty. All right, Corregidor. This photograph of Lee Oswald was stationed in Corregidor in 57. The notation of 1957 is in Oswald's own hand. Officially, Oswald will not head to Corregidor until the end of January 1958 after the death of Martin Strand. Now, this is Harvey Oswald on the left, Lee Oswald on the right. Both taken within a year or so of each other. Once again, body structure is different. Look at their shoulders. The way the shoulders hang is there. Everything about these guys is different. All right. So I have some speculation here that one of the boats that he could have gotten on that I talked about earlier was the USS Henrico, which arrived in Yokosuka in September 57. But I don't really know. I'm just kind of spitballing on what boat he was in. So we have an incident that we're going to talk about, I believe, later on, with Sidney Robinson and Oswald when Oswald was on guard duty. And he says he's one of the ones that said Oswald got shot in the wrist. And but there's another incident that will occur while Oswald is in Taiwan, when Oswald was clearly not in Taiwan, but he was in Taiwan, if you feel what I'm saying. And we'll get to all that stuff here coming up. Let me see, what can I skip here? Yeah, the Martin Strand stuff. This is all about Martin Strand. And so these guys provide a whole bunch of names here. Like Robinson provides all these names like John Smith, Richard Pritchard, Tom Mayu, Roger Shatilly, Donald Hodling, and Ski Trzeski, and first name unknown Craig. I actually found that guy's name. So we have another problem we have with Oswald and the Marines is that they will interview one Marine guy and he'll give a list of all the people that they were with Oswald. And then he'll go interview somebody else, and another person at the same time will give a completely different list. Like, it's brutally obvious at this time that these Oswalds are associating with different people. And John Armstrong did a great job of consolidating the names into different lists of who actually knew who at what time. Let me see. All right. So Robinson stated he was a corporal of the guard at Atsugi intermittently during his assignment there, and that Oswald was assisted with temporary guard duty under his immediate supervision at Atsugi and aboard a ship while on Philippine maneuvers from October or November of 1957 until February of 1958, when Robinson returned to the United States. Oswald was still at Atsugi when Robinson left in February 58. So according to Robinson, Oswald was still at Atsugi when he left Japan in February of 58, and that's problematic because Oswald's supposed to be in Subic Bay at that time. We know Oswald was stationed at Subic Point until late January, when he was stationed in Corregidor in Philippines until March 18th, 58, right? So we have a ton of people who came forward and gave testimony that they knew Oswald in the Marines, and where they said he was doesn't jive with what we know about the known record. Like, this is a great list from Edward J. Epstein, who wrote the book Legend, which is pretty good. He speculates on a lot of stuff. Here's my thing. If you're going to speculate, you need corroboration or a plausible place in the storyline for an incident to have occurred. That's it. That's what you need, right? And if you don't have it, you don't have it. But these guys here, this is a fascinating list. There aren't really statements from a lot of these guys, but these are the guys who are listed, and this really contradicts some of the statements of some of the other guys who talked to other investigators over the years. All right, so Oswald will be court-martialed April 11th, 1958, and he's going to be sent to the brig for 2 months. Okay. This causes some problems, again, based on timing, because where's Oswald? Why is he in the brig? He's in the brig because he basically got into a fight with an officer at a bar, the Bluebird Cafe in Yamato, Japan, on June 20th, 1958. It was Sergeant Michael Rodriguez. I feel it was another staged event. To me, it feels like another staged event. So he's in the brig for months, like from June 27th until middle of August. And that ends up being problematic because of conflicts on where the other Oswald is also. So all these data sheets here are from his Marine diaries, which are, even kind of goddamn hard to locate. You got to go digging in some obscure places to find them, but you can find them at Armstrong's Research, and you can find them at Ancestry.com and all that stuff. So Oswald was in the brig starting June 27th, 1958. However, somehow he managed to sign and date his life insurance paperwork on June 30th, 3 days after he was confined. It was also witnessed by Peter J. Cassisi. And it actually turns out Cassisi was sent to the brig at the same time Oswald was, but why are they letting him do stuff like this? I don't understand. This whole incident with for some reason, this theme of his life insurance that we talked about earlier, how his mother got it the day before he had his mastoidectomy, right? And so that life insurance policy pops up throughout his life and randomly documents dates and times and addresses of where he was living when changes were made to the policy. Really weird how it keeps popping up like that. All right. Taiwan, September 14th, 1958 to October 6th, 1958. This is very interesting stuff. I'll tell you why. This is the best example of Oswald being in two places at once while in the Marine Corps. Yeah, I have to apologize. I'm starting to fade. So, Oswald, let's just be clear about a concept here. Oswald can't be in Taiwan September 14th to October 6th, 1958, if he's in the hospital because he has fucking gonorrhea and anal bleeding. And I wonder how you get gonorrhea and anal bleeding at the same time. The Warren Commission concluded Oswald did go to Taiwan as part of his tour of duty. The HSCA, however, concluded that, based on DoD statements regarding Oswald, that he did not go to Taiwan and had remained behind at Atsugi as part of a rear echelon unit. That's false about the rear echelon unit. It actually was a maintenance squad, but we'll get into that. So here you can see that the Department of Defense, they maintain the position that Oswald never sailed to Taiwan and he remained behind at NAS Atsugi. Well, it's not what the Warren Commission said, but it to this day is what the Department of Defense said. And how can that be? Oswald sailed on the U.S. Skagit, a.k.a. 105, on September 14th, 1958. Very well documented. There's his name on the diary, September 14th, Japan, Atsugi, MACS-1. All the other guys who were on this boat, very well documented. Oswald was on this boat. Oswald, however, was added to the sick list on September 16th, 1958 at Atsugi. What date was that? September 14th. Oh, so he sails out on September 14th, 1958. But on the 16th, 1958, he's at Atsugi and he's put on the sick list. Hello. Medical records clearly show Oswald was in Atsugi on September 16th, 1957, where he was sent to the lab at Mainside for testing. He returned to the Atsugi Hospital, number 5838, on September 20th. September 20th is the date he's allegedly taking off, right? Or he's supposed to be already out at sea then. So here we go. On September 29th, 1958, the complaint was urethral discharge. They took a smear, and that was many pus cells were noted. No organisms were noted. The note underneath is good response to therapy, has been doing much heavy lifting. They must have given him light duty for 3 days to repeat smear 1 week. October 6, 1958, the complaint was urethral discharge. They took a smear. The report was moderate amount of pus cells, few grams positive cocci. This is not gonorrhea. Oh, yes, it is. Heavy discharge with occasional burning. He has been doing heavy lifting recently. Some heavy discharge with occasional burning of the urination. Although this says dysuria has been doing heavy lifting recently. Okay, so the heavy lifting thing is hilarious, and I'll get into that later when we get to when it's relevant. But there's no heavy lifting going on, okay? That's a cover. October 24th, 1958, the complaint was urethral discharge. So this motherfucker is going from, and actually, it's not even September 16th. I don't even know if I have the whole document here, but the original document goes back to August 24th. He started going to the clinic on August 24th because he had VD. He had gonorrhea. All right. So September 16th, he's in there for urethral discharge to lab. And let's look at these numbers now. What fucking number lab is he? What number is he at? 3835. That's Atsugi. What was Ikusuka? 3923 or whatever it was. It was 39 number, not 3835. So this motherfucker is still at Atsugi. Okay. He's still at Atsugi. And we know for fact he's at Atsugi. How do we know that? Because when you look into where they sent him to main side for testing, all right? When you look into what main side is, Atsugi had 2 main camps, East Camp and main side, right? So all the references to main side in the fucking documentation here is proof he was at main side. He was not on a boat. He was at main side. All right, Captain George Donabedian testified to the Warrant Commission Oswald was sent from the Atsugi Naval Hospital to main side for a smear, indicating the doctor sent him to the base lab to provide a test sample. Oswald was not treated on board the U.S. Skagit. Oswald will still be at Atsugi on October 7th when he is admitted to the hospital for 6 days for a colonoscopy due to rectal bleeding. What'd they say about Oswald and Jack Ruby? Bleeding from the rectum. Rectum, it nearly killed him. All right, so here's the problem. We have absolute proof that he was in Taiwan at the exact same time that we have absolute proof that he was at the hospital in Atsugi. Now, Charles Rhodes, this is another guy who worked with Oswald. Rhodes was present during Oswald's guard duty incident on October 4th, 1958. Oswald is sent back to Atsugi on October 6th via plane. Despite Oswald having been on the sick list at Atsugi, Rhodes was witness to Oswald's guard duty incident and the fact that they sent him back on a plane on October 6th, 1958.
You ever get the feeling the city walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating your soul? You crave wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe chase some elk, fish a private stream. Well, listen up. There's a whole world out there, and finding your own piece of it just got easier. Head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forest, mountains, you name it. Search by acreage, location, the kind of hunting or fishing you dream of. Land.com. It's where the adventure begins.
It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? If you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. Choose from hundreds of social casino style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay? But like I said, when we look over this document here, all these dates that he was supposed to be on a boat, he was September 16th, 1958, to lab for smear. Okay? At Atsugi, right? These fucking idiots in the Donabedian exhibit basically posted enough medical documentation, and these fucking idiots in the Folsom exhibit posted enough payroll records to fucking realize there were 2 motherfuckers in the goddamn Marines. This isn't crazy. This isn't bullshit. This is fucking over. This is covert operations. This is tradecraft. And they fucked up in the records. And I want the real fucking records. Trump, motherfucker. Lee Oswald had already been in the subunit at Atsugi. This is the problem. The official story is that he's transferred back from Taiwan, as per the Warren Commission, because remember, the HCA denies that he was ever in fucking Taiwan. But the Warren Commission says that he was transferred back on the 6th, and that he was transferred to a maintenance unit, and a rear echelon unit, right? They can't make up their mind if it's a rear echelon unit or a maintenance squadron. But when you come to understand how to interpret this little botched fucking and nearly erased sentence here, you come to realize he was in a maintenance squadron. And what does a maintenance squadron mean? It means he was a mechanic. Okay, and mechanics had to go to Memphis, but we already talked about Memphis. And Oswald didn't go to fucking Memphis. So how was he put in a maintenance squadron if he never went to Memphis? I don't fucking know. You see, everything I'm saying here, these voids, this is how you do your research, and you come stumbling upon potholes, great big black holes in the middle of research, and you're like, wow, of course there's documents there. Of course, but I don't have them. And where are they? That's where they are. All right, so here we go. This one here, October 6th, 58, Oswald's at Atsugi, Japan. Okay, and he's in the rear echelon maintenance unit. October 6th, 1958. No, he's not. He's in MACS-1, Mag 11 in Pingtung, North Taiwan. Okay, These are two conflicting Marine diaries that show Oswald is in two fucking places at once on October 6, 1958. And if someone out there is going to say, no, this is one early in the day and one late in the day, that's not how they did diaries. Diaries were done once a day, period. And if they were abridged or updated, it's noted in the next day's diary with a little note under it. Let me see. I even got one here. I can probably show you. Now look at this. Look at this guy, Albert Tate, and look at all this stuff under here. These are all notations from what he did previous. Okay? But that's not what we're seeing here. What we're seeing here is outright fucking Oswald in two places at one time. Boom. Pingtung, Taiwan, and Natsuki, Japan, both on October 6, 1958. Okay? Here, a better copy of this. See, H and MS, that's a maintenance squadron. Maintenance squadron means mechanic. Mechanic means Memphis. Don't ask me. All right, so William Trail, he's another witness we're going to talk about. He was an MACS-1 with Oswald and Natsuki. He claims that when his group went to Taiwan, he had heard that Oswald was being held prisoner, which means he was in the brig at the time. This puts Trail's Taiwan trip between June 27th and August 13th, 58. Harvey Oswald was in Taiwan from September 14th to October 6th. On November 27, 1963, a memo was sent out by the FBI to field offices advising them that, quote, it doesn't consider it feasible to identify and consider interviews of military personnel who served with Oswald during 1958. Do you understand what I just said? It does not consider it feasible to identify and consider interviews of military personnel who served with Oswald during 1958. They're saying, don't look for that man behind the curtain in 1958. That's what they're saying. They're saying you can't look at 1958. Because if 1958 will show that he was in two places at once. He was in Natsuki and he was in Taiwan at the same time. And they provided the records that prove that. But then they expect to gaslight us into thinking, oh, they just made a mistake or something. No, fuck you. If you can't see a pattern from 1945 all the way through here, I don't know what to tell you. All right. More listings of people who are MACS-9 with Oswald. Oswald's leave record. When you look at Oswald's leave record, it corresponds to the statements of people who saw him on leave, like Mr. McCracken at the 3830 address. So here's something that's messed up. Oswald applies for the Albert Schweitzer College March 19th, 1959. Okay. That's 6 months before. That's 6 months before he allegedly leaves the Marines in September, but it's exact same time that he went through that barrage of testing where he took the Russian exam, right? So people, here's the thing with Oswald speaking Russian. Lee Oswald never spoke Russian. Harvey Oswald allegedly spoke Russian. And people who actually knew Harvey Oswald said that he spoke very fluently. We can't pinpoint a date or time that he ever actually learned Russian. And I don't want to hear shit about he went to some 3-week school and learned Russian. You know, it doesn't happen that way. Russian is complex. I grew up with a Russian friend. I know one sentence after knowing him for years. You know what I mean? It's hard. So I don't buy that at all. But we have guys like Richard Call who said that Oswald was listening to Russian language records, phonographs. I don't know how I can't process that at all. When I get done with all this stuff and I write my book, I'm going to move on to Oswald and the Soviet Union, and I'm going to dissect that with a fine-tooth comb, and I will eventually come to conclude what was really happening, because a lot of times you need to know what happened in the future to understand the past. And this is a perfect example. We can't understand Oswald's Russian language stuff until I get to the future when he's in Russia, and then I can figure out what really went on. Then I can reflect on what he was doing here. So, all right, January 17th, 45, Lee Oswald at 5 years old had his tonsils out. But yet while he is in the Marines, he was sick with his tonsils. Here we go. Left tonsil was irritated. Injection of phalanx with percolate, left tonsil, and something gargles. But yeah, Oswald had his tonsils out in 45. That's what it was. Okay, Oswald had his tonsils out in 45 and the mastectomy in 46. Oh, so just for clarification's sake. So yeah, how the fuck are you going to have your tonsils out and then you have a problem with your tonsils when you're in the Marines? Doesn't make any sense. All right, so dental prosthesis failed on May 5th, 58. Oswald had his tooth knocked out. We all know he had his tooth knocked out because we have a damn photo in front of us that shows he had his tooth knocked out. And in the Marines, They had to replace the tooth. There's documentation right there. His tooth was replaced May 5th, 1958. Okay. However, when they exhumed Oswald's body, he had 2 natural teeth. So besides the documentation of his tooth being knocked out in 1955, and besides the documentation of his tooth being replaced in the Marines in 1950, whatever year that was, 58, okay? Oswald's autopsy showed he had 2 natural teeth. Okay. Isn't the evidence overwhelming yet that there were 2 Oswalds? I hope every county researcher out there is eating their fucking words right now. All right. Another picture. This is a bad picture, but this is Oswald. It says here, Lee and I went squirrel hunting with Vada, that's his wife, brother, on the Mercer's farm in February 58 when Lee was home on leave from the Marines. That's my .22 rifle. See, he says it so casually in February 58, but he changed that story twice. He changes it to December 58, and then he changes it to September of 59, so who knows? All right, so Palmer McBride and the Pfister Dental Lab. We're going to cover this real quick because we're almost done, actually. We're going to have this wrapped up in the next half hour. The day after the assassination, Airman Palmer McBride reported to his CO, he's in the Air Force, that he had known Oswald in New Orleans in 1957 and 1958. McBride stated that Oswald and his mother were living at the Senator Hotel or a rooming house next to it. Okay. So, Palmer McBride is working at Pfister Dental Lab from 1950, I think 56 onward. He's there for about 2 years. Around December of 57 through, he says, about May of 58, he says Lee Harvey Oswald comes and works there at Pfister Dental Lab. This is a gross impossibility. I just showed you how both Oswalds were in Corregidor at 2 different times, spanning a gap of November through December 20th. I don't have any additional evidence that Oswald, either of them, could have made it back to New Orleans. Especially since the date was narrowed down, I believe, in the Palmer McBride investigation. I believe it was narrowed down to like October or November that he was there. But clearly, Harvey Oswald was in Corregidor from November 22nd through December 20th. And then we have Lee Oswald was in Subic Bay and Corregidor through the end of January, right? So, the end of January, then they went to Corregidor, then it was the end of March when they went back to Atsugi. But still, they're both tied up at this time. It would have had to have been for Oswald to have been back in New Orleans working with Palmer McBride. It would have had to have been after December 20th. It would have taken 10, 12 days. It would have been in January. But McBride is pretty adamant it's in 57. And so what does that tell you?
You ever get the feeling the city walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating your soul? You crave wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe chase some elk, fish a private stream. Well, listen up. There's a whole world out there, and finding your own piece of it just got easier. Head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forest, mountains, you name it. Search by acreage, location, the kind of hunting or fishing you dream of. Land.com. It's where the adventure begins.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
If you're following me so far and you understand that these Oswalds there's 2 Oswalds in the Marines at the same time, and we have the photographic evidence, we have the documentary evidence, we've got the medical records, right? It's pretty goddamn concrete. That tells me that a third party was using the name Lee Harvey Oswald while working at Pfister Dental Lab and talking about communism. A third person using the name of Oswald while the 2 Oswalds are in Atsugi, provably. And Corregidor, of course. You know what I'm saying. But this is a third person who's using the name of Lee Oswald. Is this part of the setup? I don't know. And who could it have been? Well, allegedly, the person who was Oswald working for Pfister Dental Lab during this time period, besides talking about communism all the time, they rode a motorcycle. And that's why they hired them, because they could do deliveries on a motorcycle. Oswald didn't own a motorcycle. Robert Oswald, I think, honestly, if I had to bet right now and put money on it, I'd say it was Robert Oswald. And this was one of the examples of the times that he posed as his brother during this setup. He's old enough. He was years older than Oswald, right? So he would have been, 1920-ish, 21, around this time. He was born in 54, and that would have been, no, he wouldn't. He would have been younger than that. So no, he could have totally pulled it off. But other than that, it's been suggested, Diana Thomas suggested to me that it was Gordon Novell because he owned a motorcycle and was in New Orleans at the time. And he is actually, believe it or not, connected to a lot of these people like Touche. And he's actually in Texas at a lot of times when Oswald's growing up. I haven't even touched Novell yet in as far as the early Oswald stuff. His part in the assassination was minimal. But in as far as this early Oswald stuff, I haven't touched him at all. There is an ample opportunity for an investigator out there to really pull apart the life of Gordon Novell and connect it to all this Oswald stuff. Legit. All right. So I have some more statements from people who knew this person down in New Orleans and as Lee Harvey Oswald when he was talking about communism. And basically, I have a whole bunch of slides here that all they do is corroborate, the dates that somebody was there named Oswald, and they were talking about communism at a time when it couldn't have been Oswald, right? So that's a lot of these slides. I'm not going to go into much more detail than that, but there definitely was somebody working there named Lee Oswald who rode a motorcycle. The FBI just dismissed his claims entirely, and the dates that Harvey Oswald was in Corregidor conflict with the dates that Palmer McBride stated, and so. This is a woman from Fisher Dental Lab who confirmed the information. I skipped a slide here from John Armstrong. Again, all these slides, all they do is really confirm that Oswald really did work there, or somebody going by the name of Oswald really did work there. All right, so we have some interesting stuff. We have some interesting slides here as we get towards the end of Oswald's career. I don't get into his defection or any of that stuff. That's going to be a whole book separate. But here we have a statement, an FBI report from Major William P. Gorski, Assistant Provost Marshal, MCAS El Toro, California, advised S.A. Sam J. Schumacher on November 27, 1963, that Lee Harvey Oswald was assigned to the lighter-than-air base and air facility adjacent to MCAS El Toro. Major Gorski stated Oswald was discharged from the Marine base in March of 1959, and that all of Oswald's records had been transferred to Washington, D.C. Major Gorski noted that Oswald reportedly had been arrested by the Santa Ana, California Police Department for hitchhiking in 1959, but a check of the records of Santa Ana Police Department failed to locate a record for his arrest. And what's big about this document? It says Oswald got out of the fucking Marines in March 59? That's not true, but that would make a lot of sense. And why would that make a lot of sense? And let me get to this document. This document is from Robert Oswald, FBI report documenting a statement by Robert Oswald, and I'll read this to you. The witness declared that the petitioner was a member of the United States Marine Corps from 1956 until sometime in 1959 when he was given an honorable discharge. He stated that following the petitioner's discharge, he came to Fort Worth for a few months and then went to New Orleans, Louisiana on or about October 59 and departed for Russia. Okay, so if he got out in September, he couldn't have stayed a few months in New Orleans and then gone to Russia in October. No. But if he got out in March, and there's even some speculation he might have gotten out in July of 59, he most certainly could have stayed for a couple of months with his brother out of sight. Did that actually happen? Probably. Because when you have a document and you only have fucking one of them and it has a bombshell on it and it's usually hidden that no one's ever talked about before, that's usually the truth. So yes, Oswald probably did. The real Lee Oswald did get out of the Marines sometime prior to September 1959. And I believe he had to have hung around in Santa Ana somewhere, even though he was never stationed there. The other Oswald was stationed there. He was stationed at El Toro, which was something different. All right. Continuing on. Carrie Thornley. Carrie Thornley was impersonating Oswald in the months and years leading up to the assassination, and Garrison knew Thornley was involved in every aspect of this thing. Garrison knew that Carrie Thornley shot J.D. Tippit. What you're looking at here is the first page of Garrison's file on Thornley, okay? The second page here says Douglas Jones Printing, and he's talking about the Jones Printing stuff, right? Okay, so Garrison knew Thornley shot J.D. Tippit, and Garrison knew that Thornley was the one who had the flyers made for Oswald. Right? He knew it for fact. That's why this was on the front page of his file. And this is the way that you know that Garrison knew more than he knew, because he organized his files in such a manner that it's obvious that the people who are labeled on the file, who are not in the files he's talking about, were directly connected. Garrison, man, God, we have such a debt of gratitude we owe to that man. So Thornley always testified, and I'll read this, that he was only in the Marines for like 2 years. He goes, when did you first become acquainted with him? He goes, it was around Easter of 59, either shortly before or shortly after. Let's see. He was in the Marines at the time. Yes, sir. I take it you were also, sir. He goes, yes, sir. How long had you been in the Marines? He goes, at the time, I'd been in the Marines over half a year. So that's 6 months, right? Half a year, 6 months. I had been in the reserves for many years. I had been on active duty only half a year. Well, he's a fucking liar. Because what you're looking at on the right-hand side is Kerry Thornley's absolutely jam-packed fucking training schedule that goes back to May 28th, 1956. Okay? So I don't want to hear fucking nothing about he was only half a year. And look at his training. He went through basic Marine training, then recruit training, and then he goes through AAA man training. You know what AAA man training is? It's amphibious assault. AAA is amphibious assault. This motherfucker was trained to storm the beaches of Normandy and shit like that, right? Then, as we'll see, there's some conflict with his schedule, and he lied about stuff. You know, he said that he was only in for half a year. You know, he was in the reserves, but that was it. You look at this fucking training schedule. Look at his training schedule. Basic AAA man. Then retraining. Retraining was when he goes to Biloxi, and we'll show this here momentarily. It says he's at Los Alamos, California, but he's one of the few people who it says Los Alamos, California, when he's actually at Biloxi, because remember Biloxi, it always said HQBN, Headquarters Battalion, HQMC, Arlington, Virginia. That was the cover, not his cover. He had a different kind of cover. This Los Alamos, California MACS 18 base, guess what? That was a multi-jurisdictional base, meaning it had Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and CIA. Okay. That is what is put here. But his retraining was actually at Biloxi, and I'll prove that here momentarily. And then after that, he does, look at this. He's got 4.5 fucking years of nonstop training. 4.5 years of nonstop training. But he's like, oh, I was in the Marines for 6 months. Fuck you, Kerry Thornley. So right here is when he allegedly went active. So everything he did before that, he did allegedly in the reserves. All these courses that he took, the AVN electric operator and all this stuff here, this is all the shit that Oswald took and not in the reserves. Okay, so Kerry Thornley's a fucking liar. Kerry Thornley, while he's overseas in Atsugi, he'll be sent back here in 1959. He'll be sent back from Atsugi. When he says he's at Atsugi, he'll be sent to Washington, D.C. because allegedly he wins an instructor technique course competition. Let me still have that paperwork. Yeah, that's so fucked up. So this is what happens. This is a timeline, and this is how you can learn so much from chronologies. So Oswald makes his arrangements to go to the Albert Schweitzer School, showing his defection or all that stuff was planned. Albert Schweitzer School, remember, run by Percival Brundage, who ran Southeast Airline, who ran the fucking cocaine out of goddamn South America, okay? So I don't want to hear fucking nothing about Albert Schweitzer was not a fucking CIA front. It was one building on one school, okay? It had like 3 people went there. It's fucking front. Okay, so he plans that in March of 59. He's out by September of 59. Immediately after Oswald is out of the Marines, Kerry Thornley is grabbed from Atsugi and sent back to Washington, D.C., allegedly because he won an instructor techniques competition. Okay? I don't buy that for a second. Then he's allegedly doing the avian electrical operator stuff until January 31st, 1960. Eventually,
You ever get the feeling the city walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating your soul? You crave wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe chase some elk, fish a private stream. Well, listen up. There's a whole world out there, and finding your own piece of it just got easier. Head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forest, mountains, you name it. Search by acreage, location, the kind of hunting or fishing you dream of. Land.com. It's where the adventure begins.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I'm going to skip over a lot of this stuff. Okay, here's where Kerry Thornley got recruited. He got recruited by the CIA from the Voice of Democracy contest in 1956 when he was still in high school. Okay, Kerry Thornley is a goddamn ass-kissing, science fair winning, super fucking nerd who won the Voice of Democracy contest. And what did I say before? Anything that has the name democracy or freedom or anything is CIA fucking bullshit, right? So Voice of Democracy contest winner, he won that, and that's where they recruited him. It was a big deal back in the day. Then there's like all these newspaper articles about him doing stuff, but ultimately they recruit him. Then he goes in, he does all this heavy amphibious assault training. Right there he is. He's doing this fucking this Pacific exercise in Formosa, and this is after Oswald's already back in Santa Ana, and he's already left, or he's either gotten out of the Marines, and Kerry Thornley is already here doing this fucking stuff in 1960, right? And why is this important? This is all important. Operation Blue Star was actually what it was called, but the dates of when Kerry Thornley get out of the fucking Marines is what is the linchpin and everything, because it is as soon as he gets out of the Marines, the impersonations of Oswald start at Bolton Ford. Within 3 weeks, 2 weeks, something like that. And honestly, it's only 2 or 3 weeks if you believe that Kerry Thornley didn't make it to New Orleans until January of 1961. Because I now am 100% convinced it was not William Seymour at Bolton Ford. It was Kerry Thornley and Lawrence Howard, because he mentions Lawrence Howard as Leopoldo in his confession letter to Jim Garrison. So connect the dots there on your own. But that motherfucker was there at Bolton Ford. And we know this because they were the same height at the time, about 5'10". That's how we know this. So I'm going to have to correct that in a future edition of my book, because I think I named William Seymour as that man, but it wasn't. It was Kerry Thornley. And it was Kerry Thornley because the timing fits perfectly. The split second he gets out of the fucking Marines, where all he does is, let me see if I have any more stuff on him. I think I do. I have something real important on him coming up. So all he does is he goes to Atsugi and he starts to investigate Oswald. Why would he do that? Why would he go to Atsugi and start to investigate Oswald? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. He was assigned to investigate Oswald from the jump. So this is not a Kennedy-related document. I found this because I'll explain the story and how I got to this momentarily, but this is Kerry Thornley at Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi, December 1957. Thornley has never mentioned he was ever a Keesler. No one's ever mentioned a Keesler. It's not in his biography. Covered it up. How do we know that this is Kerry Thornley? Well, that's motherfucking Kerry Thornley. That's how we know it's Kerry Thornley. Okay? So Wayne Setzer was in basic training and basic electronics school at Keesler Air Force Base in 1957. He posted these images online. Kerry Thornley is clearly in the first row, second from the left. Right? That's him right there. Okay. And this is Wayne Keesler, is both of his photographs. So now when you go and look at the dates of when this actually occurred, December 1957, as when graduation was, here, all it's got for Kerry Thornley is retraining. Right? So he's got basic amphibian training, and then he goes into retraining where he goes to electrical operator school here at Keesler. And then January 31st, 58, he's retraining again. And then all of a sudden, in July, he's a basic avian control operator, right? So like, what the fuck? How does that work? How do you go from a generic retraining and all of a sudden you're a basic avian control operator? Why'd they do that? Why'd they do it? They did it because they were teaching him to be Oswald. They put him in Oswald's footsteps on purpose. Let me see. When Thornley arrives in Atsugi, he begins to inquire about Oswald and Oswald's unit, and he uses an alias. He uses the alias of Rick Thornley, and he claims to be a professional writer. We know this because of the statements of a guy named Ronald Schwinghammer. Ronald Schwinghammer was approached by Rick Thornley, who was taking pictures and making lots of notes about Oswald's group. Why would he do that? Well, Kerry Thornley was specifically taken, trained, and sent to Bloyd to become Oswald. Ultimately, and that's what he does. And going through all these motions were how he learned who Oswald was and how to be Oswald. By going through all the units that Oswald had been in, the training courses he had been in, all that stuff, that's what they did. So when he gets to New Orleans by February of 61, which is actually January of 61, he's going to Bolton Ford with fucking Lawrence Howard and the guy trying to get Jeeps for Democratic Cuba, right? Give me a fucking break. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about pieces of the puzzle falling into place. I'm talking about Kerry Thornley. Once Kerry Thornley gets to New Orleans, he will put himself in the company of Martin McAuliffe, Kent Courtney, and Clint Bolton. These men work for the CIA. These are CIA propagandists. McAuliffe will be credited with connecting Thornley and Guy Bannister. Thornley will move from New Orleans to Arlington, Virginia in December of 1963, and that's also happens to be the headquarters of HQMC. Right. So in his confession letter to Jim Garrison, Kerry Thornley identifies Buddy Allen Simcoe as his potential handler or someone who is intelligence babysitter, as he puts it. Buddy Allen Simcoe has a book called Tripping Down Memory Lane, which offers a very unique insight. Buddy Simcoe was another guy who was in the classes that were in the weeks behind Oswald, who went through the exact same schedule, and I believe it was on purpose. They were all keeping tabs on Oswald. Buddy Simcoe, all these guys, Kerry Thornley, and there's another one here, John Ballantyne. So Kerry Thornley identifies Lieutenant Ballantyne as being another handler, and I couldn't find any references to it. And then all of a sudden, as I'm going through some of these documents, I find this, John Ballantyne. So I haven't done a deep dive on John Ballantyne yet. I still need to. But John Ballantyne was most likely the handler of Bud Simcoe, who was keeping tabs on Kerry Thornley, who was going to be impersonating Oswald. Right? You see the chain that led directly to Office of Naval Intelligence. Right? When you read through Buddy Simcoe's book, he basically makes the point that all that stuff was intelligence operative work that he was doing in the records filing room back at Santa Ana. So, all right, we're going to do the Wilcott testimony real quickly, and then I'm going to run through a couple extras, and then we're going to be done. So James Wilcott was allegedly a CIA accountant, and I didn't believe this story for a very long time, but the longer I spent on Oswald, the more it made a lot of sense. So I'll just go ahead and I'll read this. I'm not going to give much of an explanation. It'll explain itself. Mr. Wilcott says, I worked from the years of May 57 to April of 66. And in what general capacity with the CIA? All in finance, accounting all the time. How did you become employed with the CIA? I was recruited from the school in Syracuse, New York, where I was taking a course in accounting and business administration. Well, I was on day duty for the station. It was a guard type function at the station, which I worked for overtime. There was a lot of excitement going on at the station after the Kennedy assassination. Towards the end of my tour of duty, I heard certain things about Oswald somehow being connected with the agency, and I didn't really believe this when I first heard it, and I thought it was absurd. Then, as time went on, I began to hear more things in that line. I take it from your testimony that in November 63, you were stationed in Tokyo, the Tokyo station. Is that correct? That's right. Drawing your attention to the period immediately after the assassination of President Kennedy at that time, did you come across any information concerning Lee Harvey Oswald's relationship with the CIA? Yes, I did. And will you tell the committee what that relationship was? Well, it was my understanding that Lee Harvey Oswald was an employee of the agency and was an agent of the agency. What do you mean by the term agent? That he was a regular employee receiving a full-time salary for agent work for doing CIA operational work. How many people made this reference to Oswald being an agent of the CIA? At least there was at least 6 or 7 people specifically who said that they either knew or believed Oswald to be an agent. Was Jerry Fox one of the people that made this allegation? To the best of my recollection, yes. And who is Jerry Fox? Jerry Fox was a case officer for his branch, the Soviet Russia branch in the Tokyo station, who purchased information from the Soviets. Upon your memory and the list that you brought with you today, will you tell the committee the names of the CIA officers who you remember working in Tokyo in 63? Yes, there was Glenn Nelson, Japan branch, who had embassy cover. Jerry Fox, SR branch, Soviet Russia branch. Mr. Goldsmith says, excuse me, please proceed very slowly. Wilcott says, Jerry Fox, SR branch, Reed Dennis, chief of Soviet satellite, and Bill Center, China branch. Wilcott says, the specific incident was soon after the Kennedy assassination, where an agent, a case officer, I'm sure it was a case officer, came up to my window to draw money. And he specifically said in the conversation that ensued, he specifically said, well, Jim, the money I drew the last couple of weeks ago was money either for the Oswald project or for Oswald. The name of this Oswald project was allegedly called RX Zim, which is rather interesting to me. RX, I'm thinking pharmacy, perhaps medical something, and Zim, short for perhaps Zimmerman. You never know. I've come across these things in my Oswald research, and it's kind of hard to say. The reason I believe Wilcott's testimony that he was distributing money for the Oswald project is because of one name and one name only. The rest of the story is completely unverifiable. But the name Robert Hashima that he provided, he should not have known that name. That is the deepest cover you're ever going to hear about. This guy was a double agent for America and Japan, and he worked with the CIA out of Atsugi. Okay. Nobody should have known that name for till the 90s. And when people know things that they shouldn't know, there's a good chance that what they're telling you is true. And so do I believe Mr. Wilcott's statements? I do absolutely. I do absolutely believe that he was aware of this Oswald deception. All right, some extras, and then we'll get out of here. This is the DOD ID allegedly found on Oswald when he was arrested, okay? This is a fake. The expiration date on it is off by 1 day from the actual expiration of the one that was issued to him when he left the Marines. And the photograph on it was actually taken in Minsk. So I don't know how they could have used a photograph that was taken in Minsk on an ID that was issued to him in September 59 before he went to Minsk. Know what I mean? Also, whoever fabricated this, that's not Lee's signature. That's probably Marina Oswald's signature. They used her signature on a bunch of things. But that number, 4271617, that is the actual number of Oswald's legitimate DOD card that he was issued when he left. So the person who faked this card with this picture somehow knew the authentic number of his DOD card. How's that possible? Marina, I'll tell you how it's possible. Marina got the information from him, gave it to Thornley and all the other guys who were setting him up. Okay, the Office of Naval Intelligence. They pulled Oswald's security file 8 days before the assassination on November 14th, 1963 for unknown reasons. Crowley was the name of the person who pulled it. All right, the Dallas police collected around 230 pieces of evidence from the Payne home and the Beckley boarding house. This is property from the Beckley boarding house. This is a document that says, hey, forget about the fact that the list that we have seemed to double over time. Don't worry about it. That's what this says. The thing is, when the Dallas police took all the evidence from allegedly Ruth Payne's and from the boarding house, which Oswald never lived at. Oswald lived at Ruth Payne's house. I have multiple pieces of evidence where they basically admit that. And so they collected about 230 pieces of evidence, and they returned 450 pieces of evidence. And some of that evidence was stuff like this. Okay, tax withholding statements from 1956. Would you be okay? I'm sorry. No, people don't hold tax withholding statements for 6 years and have them laying around their house, right? So, and here's the biggest problem with these particular tax withholding statements. These are supposed to be documents that are typed by different people at different businesses at different times in different cities. Okay, but John Armstrong had them all analyzed. Remember, these are presented to us. They don't have the originals at the FBI anymore. All they have are photocopies, just like the fakery behind the money order that ordered the rifle, right? So these are fakes. John Armstrong had them analyzed, and they were all typed on the same typewriter, despite the fact that they were supposed to have been from different companies in different cities at different places at different times. Okay? These fucking people. And so the final thing we're going to look at today is Oswald's application for Leslie Welding. He put that he worked for the State Department when he was in Moscow. And like I said, those are just little extras, but that will wrap up today's presentation.
You ever get the feeling the city walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating your soul? You crave wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe chase some elk, fish a private stream. Well, listen up. There's a whole world out there, and finding your own piece of it just got easier. Head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forest, mountains, you name it. Search by acreage, location, the kind of hunting or fishing you dream of. Land.com. It's where the adventure begins.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
College students can save an extra 25% on their commute to class with NJ Transit's Student Pass. This will help you save major cash. So visit your college website or njtransit.com/studentpass and start saving.